So, Ari, we're going to talk about the public inquiry into the use of the Emergencies Act. We're now into the second full week of witness testimony and cross-examinations at the inquiry. I found it very striking that so far, at least in my opinion, there seems to be very little support for the government's case, especially from public officials and not the politicians. But I want to get your view. What do you think we've learned and not yet learned so far in these first couple of weeks? What's your general impression?
So I have a bit of a different number of takeaways to me that jump out from the first week or two of this. I don't think the things I think are things most Canadians turn their mind to or even talking about. It basically comes from my life as a criminal defense lawyer, which I sometimes separate from the politics. I mean, anybody should hear me go off about crime. You'd be hard pressed to think, oh, he defends people. So my takeaways, and I'll give you the number one, Rupa, and then we'll get into some other ones. The number one takeaway for me of the last 2 weeks is that for Canadians who are paying attention to this inquiry, and I think a lot are, I think most aren't. We're worried about inflation, another stupid interest rate hike that's going to take apart the middle class. We're in the middle of a real problem in the Western world right now. So I appreciate people are not distracted by the newest, shiniest object. There's a lesson to be learned here that I don't think Canadians are learning. And that lesson is the importance of cross-examination. And I know that sounds a little bit boring or legalese, but let me try and explain why, to me, that's what this Emergencies Act inquiry should be demonstrating to the Canadian people. We don't have cameras in the criminal courtrooms. Canadian people didn't watch Gomeshi's trial and watch how people that were complete liars were decimated. We're not watching the Kevin Spacey trial where his accuser was decimated and the jury came back in an hour. This is a man whose career was destroyed. We don't have cameras in the courtroom. Now, what's the link with my answer to you on that versus what Canadians should be taking away here? And this does tie into Doug Ford refusing to testify. I'm sure you're going to ask me about that later. There is a connection here. And much to your audience's chagrin, and I'm going to link this all together, I have to give Justin Trudeau credit for being willing to do what Doug Ford isn't willing to do. We'll get to that because it ties into the theme here of why this inquiry is important. I don't think the result of it will be important. You certainly saw Jagmeet Singh basically act in the most ideologically dishonest way and say, even if it comes back that this should never have been invoked, the government usurped its power. This was completely undemocratic. Freezing Canadians' bank accounts was horse manure. Rounding people up and pretending they were violent was disgusting and Kafkaesque. You see Jagmeet Singh go, no, I want to stay in the halls of power. There's all connections here. The reason I say I give Justin Trudeau some credit here is because he's willing to be on the hot seat. And my takeaway from the first 2 weeks is look at how we've come to all of the answers where Canadians are actually seeing that the Emergencies Act was a bit of a cluster. You can fill in the rest of it. You have an officer from the OPP, I think his name is Pat Morris, I'm having a brain cramp. Any Canadian interested in this who's ideologically honest, not tribalistic, not partisan, should watch Pat Morris's testimony where he basically in one fell swoop decimated the rationale for the invocation of the act. And the point that I'm making to this, and then I'm going to take it to a little detail, which I don't know how many of your viewers have seen. They should watch it. The clips are out there, where some disingenuous, full of crap witness was testifying in English. He had a bit of a French accent, but he's testifying in English. He's more well-spoken than me, and I'm a pretty well-spoken guy. But then he gets caught by one of the lawyers for the convoy people, and he gets cross-examined. And the person running for mayor who lost the other day whispers to him, answer in French, answer in French. And the reason I mention cross-examination again, just for people who don't understand why I'm saying this, is because we live in a country where there's a movement to do away with cross-examination, holding people to account, not believing all women, not believing all politicians. Cross-examination is not, Rupa, it is not standing at Queen's Park Press Gallery and deciding who you're going to take questions from, or saying the minister only has 5 minutes to answer 2 softballs. Every moment of this inquiry has come because well-prepared, well-skilled, intellectually curious lawyers are putting people on the hot seat, and they don't get to get out of the chair like politicians do, where their assistant, their young parliamentary assistant, comes yank them and say, oh, the minister has a 2 o'clock.